he moved on to Sri Rangam, being called by Ranganath, where he then took up worship there. Among other things, he developed Sri Rangam, which is still a cultural hub today of Sri Vaishnavism. Also, he went to Puri for some time, and he tried to introduce Pancharatra principles there in Puri, but Lord Jagannath didn't want it, so he sent Ramanujacarya away. Lord Jagannath was pleased with the worship that is going on there currently. So, these are some general activities. He preached widely, he traveled widely, he made many disciples, and he encountered different philosophies present there in India at the time, Buddhism, and principally Advaitavad of Sripad Shankaracharya. His form, his actual form, is still there in Sri Rangam. If you go, you can see they preserved it, mummified it, you can say. It's preserved with different scents and oils and like that. So I had the good fortune of seeing that. So yeah, this is a little bit about Sripad Ramanujacarya. I want to read from Mukundamala Stotra. This is a text by one of the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, one of the Alavars, Nam Alavar. He's written this text, which is coming in line of Sripad Ramanuja. So we're going to recite this verse. It's a little long. It's long metered. Nasta dharme nava... Okay, let's see if I can get it. Nasta dharme navasu nichaye naiva kama pabhoge. Yad bhavyam tad bhavatu bhagavan purvaka karmanurupam. Etat pratyam mama bahu matam janma janmantarepi. Advat padam bhoruha yugagata nischala bhaktirastu. Nasta dharme navasu nichayena eva kama pabhoge. Yad bhavyam tad bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanurupam. Etat prartam mama bahu matam janma janmantarepi. Tvat padam bhuruha yugagata nischala bhaktirastu. Nasta dharme navasu nichayena eva kama pabhoge. Yad bhavyam tad bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanurupam. Etat pratyam mama bahu matam janma janmantarepi. Tvat padam bhuruha yugagata nischala bhaktirastu. Please repeat. Nasta dharme navasu nichayena kama bhabhoge. Yad bhavyam tad bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanurupam. Etat pratyam mama bahumatam janma janmantarepi. Tvat padam bhuruha yugagata nischala bhaktirastu. Nasta dharme navasu nichayena eva kama bhabhoge. Yad bhavyam tad bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanurupam. Etat pratyam mama bahu matam janma janmantarepi. Tvat padam bhuruha yugagata nischala bhaktirastu. Mati, would you like to try? Nasta dharme navasu nichayena eva kama bhabhoge. Jai. Bhagavan Purva Karmanurupam Etat Pratyam Mama Bahu Mata Janma Janmantarepi Tvatpadam Buruha Yuga Gata Nishchala Bhaktirastu. Word for word. Na, not. Asta, special regard. Dharme, for religiosity. Na, nor. Vasu, of wealth. Nichaye, for the accumulation. Na eva, nor even. Kama upabhoge, for sense enjoyment. Yet, whatever. Bhavyam, inevitable. Tat, that. Bhavatu, let it happen. Bhagavan, O Lord. Purva, previous. Karma, my deeds. Anurupam, according to. Etat, this. Prartyam, to be requested. Mama, by me. Bahumatam, most desirable. Janma janma, birth after birth. Antare, during. Api, even. Tvat, your. Pada amburuha, of lotus feet. Yuga, and the pair. Gata, resting. Nishchala, unflinching. Bhakti, devotion. Astu, may there be. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O my Lord, I have no attachment for religiosity or for accumulating wealth or for enjoying sense gratification. Let these come as they inevitably must, in accordance with my past deeds. But I do pray for this most cherished boon. Birth after birth, let me render unflinching devotional service unto your two lotus feet. Purport: human beings advance towards God consciousness when they go beyond the gross materialistic life of eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating, and begin to develop moral and ethical principles. These principles develop further into religious consciousness, leading to an imaginary concept of God without any practical realization of the truth. These stages of God consciousness are called religiosity, which promises material prosperity of various degrees. People who develop this connection of religiosity perform sacrifices, give in charity, and undergo different types of austerity and penance, all with a view toward being rewarded with material prosperity. The ultimate goal of such so-called religious people is sense gratification of various kinds. For sense gratification, material prosperity is necessary, and therefore they perform religious rituals with a view toward the resultant material name, fame, and gain. But genuine religion is different. In Sanskrit, such genuine religion is called dharma, which means the essential quality of the living being. The Shastras say that this essential quality is to render eternal service, and the proper object of service of this service is the Supreme Truth, Lord Krishna, the Absolute Personality of Godhead. This eternal transcendental service of the Lord is misdirected under material conditions and takes the shape of 1, the aforementioned religiosity, 2, economic development, 3, sense gratification, and 4, salvation, or the attempt to negate all material variegatedness out of frustration. Genuine religion, however, doesn't culminate in either economic development, sense gratification, or salvation. The perfection of religion is to attain complete satisfaction of the spirit soul. And this is accomplished by rendering devotional service to the Lord, who is beyond the perception of the material senses. When the living being directs his eternal service attitude towards the eternal Supreme Being, such service can never be hampered by any sort of material hindrance. Such transcendental service is above even salvation, and therefore it certainly does not aim at any kind of material reward in the shape of name, fame, or gain. One who engages in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Being automatically attains detachment from material name, fame, and gain, which are aspired for only by those who do not understand that this name, fame, and gain are merely shadows of the real thing. Material name, fame, and gain are only perverted reflections of the substance, the name, fame, and opulences of the Lord. Therefore, the pure devotee of Lord Vasudeva, enlightened by the transcendental service attitude, has no attraction for such false things as religiosity, economic development, or sense gratification, or salvation, the last snare of Maya. The purpose of performing real religion is to attain attachment for hearing and chanting the messages of the kingdom of God. Materialistic people are attached to ordinary newspapers on account of their lack of spiritual consciousness. Real religion develops this spiritual consciousness and also attachment for the messages of God, without which all labor in the performance of religious rites is only a waste of energy. Therefore, one should not practice religion with the aim of improving one's economic welfare, nor should one use one's wealth for sense gratification, nor should the frustration of one's plans for sense gratification lead one to aspire for salvation or liberation from material conditions. Instead of indulging in sense gratification of different grades with the fruits of one's labor, one should work just to maintain the body and soul together, with the aim of inquiring into the ultimate aims and objectives of life. In other words, one should inquire into the absolute truth. The absolute truth is realized in three phases, namely the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A person who attains the highest stage of spiritual realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, automatically prays as King Kulashekar does here. Only one who renders devotional service to the Lord can attain this stage of indifference to the faults and temporary assets of material nature. Such devotional service is not a mental concoction of depraved persons, but is an actual process of God realization, characterized by full cognizance and detachment, and based on the Vedic literature. Such so-called devotional practices that have no reference to the rules and regulations set down in such books of the Vedic literatures, such as in the Shruti, Smriti, Puranas, and the Pancharatras, are not bona fide. The self-realized souls advise us to reject the pseudo-devotional practices, which simply create a disturbance on the path of spiritual realization. Only by engaging in the service of the Lord according to the injunctions of Scripture can one gradually become a qualified devotee of the Lord. And it does not matter whether it takes many repetitions of birth and death, life after life. So, here, King Kulashekar Alwar, well, I'll just read the translation again once more because that was a long purport. O Lord, I have no attachment for religiosity or for accumulating wealth or for sense gratification. Let these come as they inevitably must in accordance with my past deeds. But I do pray for this most cherished boon. Birth after birth, let me render unflinching devotional service unto your two lotus feet. So this should be our attitude. King Kulashekar Alwar, he's presenting himself as a conditioned soul, as a layman. So he's praying like this, but even within this prayer, he's showing his real position. He has no attachment for religiosity, accumulating wealth, or enjoying sense gratification. These three things, generally speaking, everybody in this world is bewildered by. People are attached to wealth, definitely, that's obvious. Sense gratification means it comes in different forms, enjoying the objects of the senses. Good food, women, money also is a form of sense gratification. Accumulating wealth is a form of sense gratification in one sense. So many things, so many forms of sense gratification are there in the world. And then religiosity, which can seem confusing. Srila Prabhupada explains here that, well, first he explains there's different gradations of human beings. Those who are like animals, they're concerned basically just with this accumulation of wealth and enjoying sense gratification, which basically animals live like. Hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, they live their life just accumulating day by day, trying to gratify their senses, looking for where is food, shelter, how to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Human beings also do this. We also have to do this. But somebody who limits his life to just these activities is living like an animal. Somebody who's a human being, he may be living in an air-conditioned apartment, and the dog may be living on the street, but the same activity is the same basic activity, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and they center their lives around this. Somebody who is a little more advanced, he takes to moral and ethical principles, Srila Prabhupada explains here. Therefore, you see people, they take up charitable activities. They come to the mental platform, in other words. Rather than just acting on the platform of the gross senses, they come to the mental platform. And they think of something, the welfare of others, the meaning of life. They ponder over something like this. Some people, they extend themselves to help other people. They open hospitals. They open charitable trusts, or donate to different charities. They give money and charity to the needy. They distribute food to those who need it. And this way they try to benefit overall society. They're concerned not just with their own eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, but they're concerned with other people's eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And then others who are a little more advanced, they think about why we're eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They think about what is the purpose of why we're eating, why we're sleeping, why we're mating and defending. Some people, upon contemplation, they just kill themselves because they realize it's pointless. Other people, the more intelligent, they contemplate upon the meaning of why. Some people postulate, well, there is no meaning to the eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. You just do it, and at the end of life, you die, and everything merges into nothing. So it's something like, make the best of it that you can, squeeze as much material pleasure out of this life as you can, enjoy as much as possible, and in the end, it's finished. Other people, there's so many different philosophies. Some people have the idea that, so many things, that life is different goals of life. In other words, they squeeze out how to be the best person, how to benefit one's nation, how to benefit one's race, etc. like this. Different people have different philosophies about the goal of life, the goal of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So they may come to the philosophical platform, as Srila Prabhupada is explaining here. But one who's more realized than all of them, he comes to the platform of religiosity. He develops some sense of religion, some sense of God consciousness. And he worships God. Srila Prabhupada explains here, these stages of God consciousness are called religiosity, which promises material prosperity of different degrees. But here, King Kulashekar Arwar, he's rejecting religiosity, even though it's a stage of God consciousness. How to understand? Generally, it's not that King Kulashekar Arwar, he's averse to God, he's averse to Bhagavan. Rather, he's averse to using, he's detached from Dharma for the sake of deriving some sort of artha from it. He's detached from Dharma for the sake of enjoying some sort of material prosperity from it. Srila Prabhupada specifically, he explains here that people who develop this conception of religiosity, these people who have some sense of Dharma, they perform sacrifices, they give in charity, they undergo different types of austerity and penance. Why? What is the purpose of these things? All with a view toward being rewarded with material prosperity. It's very common. So people take to Dharma, people take to religion with some sort of motive in mind. They worship God with some sort of motive. It's very common. Practically all over the world this is seen. People go to a church, just like Christians, they go to church on Sunday generally, if they're a good Christian. And why? Generally they want to go to heaven. They want to be saved. That's one consideration most Christians would say like that. Or to be a good person. Some people, they have a developed moral sense out of religiosity. So they think, I go to church and worship God so I can be a good person or benefit others. Others, they similarly go to church for different reasons. You find at different temples or churches, they have these prayer books where people write prayers to God. And you see what people are actually after. More often than not, people are praying for some sort of please let me, dear God, let me pass my examination. Let my friend or family member be healed of their disease. Let me, to more gross things like get a promotion, etc. like this. I've seen also too, please let this presidential candidate win the election, or let this football team win the particular game that's coming up. So people take to religiosity, take to religion just as a pretext for the most part. Really, they treat it as a vehicle to fulfill their material desires. They drag their conceptions of service in this material world to religion, and they treat it all the same. In this material world, just like we work jobs, we have some jobs. Generally, people in society, they work, unless you're a brahmachari, and you serve some master. Why do you work a job? Because you want some money from it. You want some monetary benefit. Hardly do you find people in this world, they just take up something just for the sake of benefiting others. If the employers of this world stop paying their employees, then all the offices, all the jobs will be empty. It doesn't work like that. People perform their occupation. Of course, some people, you'll find people, they say that, I'm happy in my occupation. I like doing it. I like teaching others. I like working with my hands. But really, everybody's looking for some sort of break. Then the moment people start working on the clock, they're looking at their watch when they want to get off. They don't want to do it, even though superficially they may say, and recreationally they may do it, but day in, day out, serving another person, other people which you don't know why, or serving a boss who is just rude, etc. like that, who's working you like a dog. Why is the service there? Because you want something from it. Otherwise, the service wouldn't be there. And so service is rendered in this material world for some sort of benefit. And we drag this mentality of wanting some sort of benefit for our service into religion. Therefore, we approach God with this same conception that I'm worshiping you, please give me something. I'll worship you so long you give me something, etc. like that. And so, because of this, therefore, we perform rituals, religious rituals, with a view towards resultant sense gratification. We go to church for the sake of our sense gratification. We offer prayers to God and glorification of God for our sense gratification. We execute different yagyas, different sacrifices, different religious rituals. Why? Because of sense gratification, ultimately. You see, and every tradition is there. You see Christians, they have this ritual of baptism. Why do they get baptized? Because you according to some denominations at least, you can't go to heaven unless you're baptized. Why do you want to go to heaven? For your own sense gratification. If you ask Christians, well, what will you do in heaven? Well, generally the answer is vague, but it comes something like, I'll be there with my family and friends, and the idea is I'll somehow enjoy there. So ultimately, they're taking, and then if you go to Hinduism, different yagyas are there within the Vedic tradition. So many things are there. You can do so many different yagyas. Yagyas for health, yagyas for auspiciousness. Why is auspiciousness created? You see people, so many different things are there. Why do people engage in these religious rituals? Just for sense gratification, for their own benefit, more or less. So this idea is dragged to religion. Or if somebody's a little more elevated, you find some people, they think, well, it may not be so gross, but it may be more subtly motivated. People may take to religion not out of some sort of gross, a sense of getting something gross in terms of money, fame, etc., and something more subtle, deriving from religion a sense of name, fame, prestige, being in a high position, etc., like that, being known as a very saintly personality. So it's not uncommon. Getting some position within the church or the ecclesiastical order, etc., like this, or just being known as a charitable man, a moral person, etc., like this, more subtle forms of sense gratification. So, but Srila Prabhupada writes, genuine religion is different from this. Genuine religion in Sanskrit, which is called dharma, means that essential quality of the living entity. This dharma, which we're talking about, this religion, it's of a completely different nature than those what people take religion of the world to be. In the Bhagavad Gita, which we have, Srila Prabhupada, he writes in his introduction, he gives a definition of this dharma. The English word religion is a little different from the word sanatana dharma, eternal dharma of the living entity. Religion conveys the idea of faith, and faith may change. One may have faith in a particular process, and he may change from this faith and adopt another. But sanatana dharma refers to that activity which cannot be changed. So people, they take faith as religion, but religion is different. People profess some sort of faith. They profess to be Christians. They profess to be Muslim. They profess to be Hindus. But it's just a superficial covering because it can change. Religion can't change. Religion is eternal. Faith can change. And faith is dependent upon your birth and circumstances. Because of one's birth, because of one's time, the time and place one is born within, one identifies as a Christian, or Muslim, or Hindu, or what have you. But 10,000 years ago, if you were born, would you identify as a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, etc. like that? No, because these religious traditions, they hadn't developed to such an extent. 10,000 years later, would you identify, if you were born 10,000 years later from now, would you identify as a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, etc. like that? No, because these religious traditions, who can say? They may not even be around, or if they're around, they'll be in a drastically altered form. But you'll still be there, and God will be there, and you'll still have a relationship with God. So we're speaking about this relationship with God, this eternal relationship with God. Srila Prabhupada clarifies, this relationship with God, this is the quality of the living entity. Srila Prabhupada says, for instance, liquidity cannot be taken from water, nor can heat be taken from fire. Similarly, the eternal function of the living entity cannot be taken from the living entity. Sanatana Dharma is eternally integral with the living entity. When we speak of Sanatana Dharma, therefore, we must take it for granted on the authority of Sripad Ramanujacarya that it has neither beginning nor end. That which has neither beginning nor end must not be sectarian, for it cannot be limited to any boundaries, etc. like that. So, this Dharma which we're speaking of is inherent to the living entity, and it's not that one person has a different Dharma than another person. Rather, the Dharma for all living entities is one, to act on their relationship with God. This Dharma, this Sanatana Dharma, which is inherent with the living entity, can be covered by different processes. Srila Prabhupada, he lists them here. One, the aforementioned religiosity, means superficial religion, cheating religion. Two, economic development. Three, sense gratification. And four, salvation. These others we've discussed. This fourth one, salvation. People want liberation within different traditions. This world is miserable. This world of karma. Karma has good reactions, it has bad reactions. But we have, so people, when they're a little more developed, they seek liberation from their karma. They seek liberation to attain eternal happiness. Some sort of conception is there. But this liberation is also a contamination of the soul to try and get, because it's also a form of self-interest. One is looking for something self-interested. It's still motivated service. If one worships God with the idea of salvation, with the idea of liberation from sin, still that's a form of motivated service. Srila Prabhupada continues that genuine religion, however, doesn't culminate in either economic development, sense gratification, or salvation. The perfection of religion is to attain complete satisfaction of the spiritual soul, and this is accomplished by rendering devotional service to the Lord, who is beyond the perception of the material senses. So, a devotee, as King Kulashikar Alwar here is praying, he doesn't want anything. He renders service to Krishna, he renders service to God. Why? Not for money, not for sense gratification of any form, nor even for just mundane religiosity, nor for even his own salvation. He does it, why? Just out of a sense of service. It's unmotivated. There's one verse in the Bhagavatam, Savai pum samparo dharmo yeto bhaktira dokshise haituki prati hata yatma suprasidati. That the soul, he attains real satisfaction. The highest dharma of the soul is that by which he renders unmotivated, loving devotional service unto God, Adokshaja, who is beyond the senses. And by such rendering of service, without any motive, and by rendering such service without any motive, he actually superseded it. He becomes satisfied. Otherwise, there's no satisfaction. You see, people take to religion and they worship God out of some sort of motive, but they remain dissatisfied. They worship God wanting to get something from God, and God may even supply them such whatever they desire, but still they get frustrated because they don't get what they're looking for. Because the soul is spiritual, the soul has nothing to do with this material world. The soul is 100% spiritual. He has nothing to do with this material body which he's inhabiting, this material body of blood, stool, pus, air, mucus, etc. like that. The soul is 100% consciousness. He's spiritual and God is spiritual. So just like a fish can only be satisfied in an environment of water, so the soul can only be satisfied in an atmosphere of spirit. If you're given a bunch of grass to eat from the lawn, and you're very hungry, you're not going to be satisfied by such a thing because that's not your food stuff. But if you're presented a plate of milk, grains, vegetables, you will be satisfied because that's the food for a human being. Similarly, the soul can't be satisfied, us as living entities, we won't be satisfied by any amount of money, any amount of name, fame, women, any amount of anything within this material world. Any amount of material accumulation of material goods can't satisfy us. And if we're looking for to God to give us those material benefits, that also won't satisfy us. The only thing that will satisfy us is actually rendering service to God. As Srila Prabhupada, he makes the point here, material name, fame, and gain are only perverted reflections of the substance. The name, fame, and opulences of the Lord. Therefore, the pure devotee of Lord Vasudeva, enlightened by the transcendental service attitude, has no attraction for such false things as religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, or salvation, etc. like this. So a devotee, a pure devotee, an enlightened person, he understands that what his own self-interest is. That it's in his own his swartha. His own self-interest is not worshiping God for the sake of getting something out of it. Rather, his real self-interest is worshiping God for the sake of worshiping God. Because he's an eternal servant of God. Living entity, in this material world, we take on so many different designations. According to this body. According to this body, we identify ourselves with the place of our birth, with the family of our birth, with the caste of our birth, with the color of our skin. But all of this is in relation to the body, which is temporary. The body has a beginning and it has an end. But the soul has no beginning, it has no end. We're in this life only as a flash. We've accepted this material body right now. We may have the material body as of a white American, but that'll change. That body may last 50, 60 some years, and then it will perish, and then we accept a different body. And God knows what that body will be. Could be the body of a bird, an animal, a fish, a hellish body, the body of a demigod. So the body is always changing, but the soul doesn't change. So an intelligent person, he gives up these things that are in relationship with the body, and he acts on the substance. An intelligent person is detached from that fame which is brought about in relation to the material body. The fame of the body, the name attached to one's particular body. Just like there's so many different famous people. You can name so many different people. Just like prominently, we can take Donald Trump, the President of the United States. Huge, successful businessman, successful, I guess you could say, actor in one sense, and also now successful politician. Sorry, he's a big man, big name. Everybody knows that. Even if you just say his surname, Trump, everybody immediately can understand. Across the world now, not just America. Very big man, but that name is only attached to his body. When he has to give up that body, which will be quite soon, he almost already gave it up in multiple occasions, but God somehow protected him. But God won't protect him. He won't be protected from the influence of old age. Inevitably, he has to leave his body. And once he leaves his body, where does that name go? That name stays with the body. People will remember Trump, and people may go to the gravesite of Trump and see his form there, etc., offer flowers like that. But the soul is somewhere completely different. God knows where that soul will be. Just like there was one prime minister of Sweden. During his time, obviously, big post, leader of Sweden. But in his next life, when an astrologer, he calculated that he was now living as a dog in Sweden. Nobody cared. The astrologer could understand, but not all the Swedish people, they couldn't understand, nor did they care. But the soul is the substance. The material body is just the covering. So all these things that are in relationship with the body, our family, our friends, our name, our fame, our wealth, we should be detached from. As Kalashikar Arwar is proposing here, he's praying for here. He's praying for what? Kalashikar Arwar, he's making some prayer, some pratana, he's making some submission unto the lotus feet of Mukunda. But what is that prayer? He's not asking for name, he's not asking for fame, he's not asking for these things that all these unintelligent people who go to temples, mosques, churches, who typically ask for. Rather, Kalashikar, he's intelligent and he prays for the highest boon. If you can ask something if you go to, just like we were mentioning Trump, say Trump walks in this room and he gives you a benediction. He blesses you. You can have anything you want. And you go to Trump and you ask, well, can I have $20? Or can I go and have a round of golf on your golf course in Florida? Will you please benedict me with such a great boon? What is your intelligence? How stupid are you? He's not only one of the richest men in the world, he's one of the most influential men in the world. He can give you anything. And you ask something insignificant from him. So similarly, God, he can give you anything. He's the proprietor not only of this whole world, he's the proprietor of all the worlds and all those worlds which have yet to be created. Everything which exists and everything which doesn't exist all rests within him. His opulence is so inconceivable that our mind, therefore this word comes, this name is there, adokshaja. He's beyond the reach of our senses. We can't even conceive of what to ask him. We can't even understand what our highest welfare will be. Therefore, Kalashikar is giving us here. He as a pure devotee of God, as a pure devotee of Krishna, he's setting an example and showing us what we should pray for. Not for wealth, not for fame, not for any of these things, but he prays for this most cherished boon. Birth after birth, let me render unflinching devotional service unto your two lotus feet. Why? Just because. There's no particular motive. You ask why, but there's no motive. Just for the sake, because that's what love is. Love is rendered, real love is rendered without any particular motive. So if we're approaching God, approaching Krishna means approaching in this attitude that not asking something for himself, but asking, what can I do for you? Just like in any sort of relationship between anybody, if it devolves to the point of asking, can you please give me something? Or what are you going to do for me today? What kind of relationship is that? But if the relationship is based upon love, if the relationship is based upon serving the other person, a relationship of service, always looking how to best, just like the mother is always looking how to render service to the child. And the child is demanding, at least when it's an infant, is demanding so many different things from the mother. But the mother, out of affection, of love, even though the child may be demanding so many things, the mother supplies unlimited. She gives unmotivated service to the child. However the child may act, and whatever situation may come about, the mother tolerates, and the mother, generally speaking, or at least it should be like this, the mother serves the child with love, without any sort of condition, or hopefully it's so. Of course, that relationship is also conditional in some sense. So our relationship with God, our relationship with Krishna, our relationship in approaching religion should be like this. Our mentality in approaching Bhagavan should be like this, that I have come to your shelter. How can I serve you? What can I do to bring you pleasure? And anything, any consideration for our own pleasure, we should just take that and just throw it out the window. Because neither will it bring us satisfaction, it won't help us, it won't satisfy us, and it will only inhibit our relationship with God. It will contaminate that pure relationship. Up to the point of liberation, even to the point of thinking that, I'll become liberated from my karma, or by worshiping God, I'll become liberated from all the sinful reactions of my karma. That's also a contamination. So, as Srila Prabhupada says here, to just summarize, therefore one should not practice religion with the aim of improving one's economic welfare, nor use one's wealth for sense gratification, nor should the frustration of one's plans for sense gratification lead one to aspire for salvation. One should work just to maintain the body and soul together with the aim of inquiring into the ultimate aims and objectives of life. Earlier, he writes that real religion develops this spiritual consciousness and also attachment for the messages of God. Devotees, they're attached, as you'll see, if you see these other prayers of Kulashekar Alawar, he's attached to hearing about Krishna. He's attached to chanting about Krishna. So a devotee of God, he's not attached to any hearing and chanting about anything in this material world. Rather, he's attached to hearing topics about Krishna. Because why? They're nectarian. Hearing about God's name, fame, form, etc. like this, they're very pleasing to hear. They're very pleasing to the ear, and they're pleasing to the heart. And they're a source of enlightenment. And even though a devotee doesn't necessarily aspire for such liberation, by hearing such topics, liberation is automatically awarded to such a devotee. So, So I'll just summarize this last paragraph here. Srila Prabhupada writes, King Kulashekar Alawar has complete knowledge, as a pure devotee, of both matter and spirit. He says that everything material is false, yet he has nothing to do with anything material, from heaven down to hell. In other words, the spiritual knowledge a devotee possesses not only allows him to reject material existence, but also provides him with an understanding of the reality of the positive, eternal spiritual existence. This is the understanding King Kulashekar expresses in this prayer. So, King Kulashekar Alawar, he's an acharya. Acharya means one who acts by his behavior. He sets the precept by his behavior. Ramanujacarya did similarly. And Acharya sets the example for us to follow by his practical behavior. And they leave behind means in this world by which we can cross over the ocean of birth and death. The example is given in the Bhagavatam that just like they crossed the ocean of material existence using a boat or a river, you can say, Sudastaram Duman. I forget how the verse is coming. But the demigods in Garbhastuti to Krishna within the womb, they pray that, my dear Lord, you send your empowered devotees to this world, and they cross over the ocean of material existence, and they leave behind the boat by which they crossed. Generally, if you cross a river or ocean, even that, from one place to another, you take a boat from one side, you go to the other, and then the boat's on the other side. But acharyas don't behave exactly like that. The boat by which the acharyas crossed over material existence, they leave behind on the shore from which they came. So, acharyas act in this world, and we can, as conditioned souls, we can learn by following the acharyas. We can learn by seeing how the acharyas are praying, how the acharyas are acting. And so, we would do well to imbibe this attitude of King Kulashika Alwar, because he has complete knowledge, he's in full knowledge. Not only does he have full knowledge of matter, in this world, people are striving so hard to get material knowledge. So many different areas. People are going to university, taking education, and then even having taken education, they're studying more, researching material nature. Kulashika Alwar, he knows perfectly well how karma is working. He knows how this material world is working. Why? Because he has not only complete material knowledge, but he has complete spiritual knowledge. He has knowledge of who is Bhagavan, what are his qualities, and how God is controlling everything. So not only does Kulashika Alwar, he has knowledge of both full knowledge of matter and spirit. So in this full knowledge of matter and spirit, he's showing in his full knowledge rejecting everything material and just praying birth after birth for service at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, as all acharyas do. We also recite, we were reciting in the morning. I mean, if you study the lives of teachings of Vinayacharya, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacarya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada, they all pray the same. Lord Chaitanya, the same verse comes, Nadhanam najanam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye, mama janmane janmaneshwari bhavadat bhaktir haituki toyi. O Lord of the universe, Lord Chaitanya, he composed this prayer. I do not desire material wealth, materialistic followers, a beautiful wife, or fruitive activities described in flowery language. All I want, life after life, and birth, and each birth after birth, is only unmotivated devotional service unto lotus feet. So we should imbibe this mood in our lives, in our devotional service, and our attitude in approaching Krishna and approaching Krishna's devotees. So I'll end my class here and take anything, comments or questions anybody has at this point. Yeah.
I was thinking about the point you're making, how people approach God for things which are so insignificant when God could give you anything. Find when one's attached, like an example of this would be when one's attached to, say for instance, like a particular person of the opposite sex. Then like sometimes the mind, like, anyway, speaking from like way back, the mind like can only think about that person. Even if like, say God were to give you the most beautiful woman in the universe, the mind's in such a state where it's like, no, that's all it wants. So like materialists, they could attain the Svarga Lokas, they can attain such levels of sense enjoyment we can't even conceive of, but still, because of attachment to this present body, the mind just gets so fixated in the most insignificant things. Just a reflection.
Yeah. Prahlad Maharaj, he says this verse, Nate vidu swartakadim hi vishnum durashaye bahir artamaninaha, that we don't know we don't know our actual self-interest. This fact that, this point that you can, we pray to God over insignificant things and we don't know what to pray for. You see, people are praying to God for, okay, please let me be healed of this disease. But if you're intelligent, you would pray, well, let me be healed, not only be healed of this disease, let me please be immune from all future diseases, let my whole family be immune from disease, and actually, why not just cure death from me altogether? I mean, even from a materialistic standpoint, if you're going to ask $20 from somebody who has unlimited amounts of money, you might as well just ask millions and millions and millions of dollars. To ask $20 to ask something insignificant, it shows a lack of intelligence, and it shows you don't actually know what's in your real self-interest. Therefore, this verse that Prahlad Maharaj says, we don't know what's in our self-interest, and we're attached to durashaya. We're attached to bad desires, literally bad desire. We have bad desires. We're fixated on bad desires for whatever reason. Even though God could give us, like you're making the point, He could give us anything. Bhagavan, He could custom create a person which is tailor-made for us. But nevertheless, the mind, we pray for a particular person who may in and of themselves have so many different faults, and we have so many different issues in the relationship we have with that person. Nevertheless, the mind is attached in some sort of durashaya, is attached to some sort of a terrible desire, which doesn't make any sense. Therefore, we have to learn. We have to learn. It seems strange, but we have to learn what to desire. We have to learn what's desirable and what's undesirable, because otherwise the mind, it drags us to so many different terrible desires. Gross examples could be given, just like people, they're attached to so many different things. Even though the material world, karmis, materialists of this material world, there's also people attached to bad desires. Even they acknowledge that people are attached to hard drugs. They ruin themselves because of their desire to drink, their desire to gamble, their desire to engage in illicit sex. So even materially, people can understand that people are attached to meaningless or terrible desires. But it's not just people who are engaging in degrading material activities who are like that. Everybody is like that, actually. Everybody's like that because everybody's addicted to the material nature. So yeah, it was a good point. Anything else? Yes, Jagatrata.
I have a practical question about attachment for religiosity.
Yeah.
And for accumulating wealth. I try to motivate devotees who have attachment for wealth to do book distribution. And that way, breaking it down for them that they can make such and such amount of dollars in an hour, have freedom of time, and be able to develop economically through personal book distribution. I had some doubts about the properness or the propriety. Is that the right word? The propriety of this action, or this these set of actions that I engage in, of encouraging devotees to develop wealth through book distribution.
Yeah, well, different things could be given. Of course, Krishna says in the Gita, he encourages like that. Karoshi, Yashnasi, Yajjuhosti, Dasi, etc. like that. Whatever you do in a relationship to me. So, if people are on that platform, that's one way of motivating people to take a book distribution. Of course, we should higher platform is to be doing book distribution with no material motive, which is the ideal. You see, book distribution is also a brahminical activity. Of course, income comes through that, but a brahmana, or not just brahmana, of course, a brahmana should behave in that consciousness, but a Vaishnava should also be in such consciousness that whether or not I get something from whatever service I'm doing, you could extend it to any particular service, I'll render that service. Of course, a little lower level of consciousness is that, well, I'm getting much lower level of consciousness is that I'm getting something from the service, therefore I'll engage in it. So there is that it does bring a materialistic tinge to devotional service, but it's not exactly wrong, depending on the person. Just as Krishna gives in the Gita, not everybody can act on that level, just engaging in book distribution for the sake of engaging in book distribution. And some people physically can, in terms of their situation. It's better, for example, to do book distribution for a living rather than work at McDonald's or something like that, for example. And of course, economic things are there. I know people who sustain themselves through book distribution. So, of course, you may not live very luxuriously, but it's a brahminical mode of lifestyle, so it's also good. But a higher conception than that is whether or not big or small results come, that Krishna is maintaining me. One aspect of surrender is that Krishna is my maintainer, and that if I just serve Krishna, He will maintain me somehow or another, in whatever condition. That condition may not be according to our expectation. So ultimately, we have to bring people to this consciousness. But particularly for engaging them in book distribution, we can bring people to this. It was etc. like that. Though we should make clear that there's a higher place. Just as if you look at Gita, the same thing. Krishna made clear what is the highest place. If you look at the 12th chapter, he made clear what is the highest goal. But he said, well, if you can't do this, you may as well do this. He presented solid logic. If you can't do this, you do this. You can't do this, you do this. So, okay, you may not be able to just, view book distribution as a completely purifying activity, etc. like that. But you get money from it. There is an income generated from that. You can use that income to sustain yourself like that. It's a multifaceted, and it depends on the individual involved and how they're taking it. It is beneficial. It's not wrong to preach like that because Krishna himself did it like that. So that's my thought.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Are you satisfied with that?
Yeah, satisfied. It's based on the individual, in that because Krishna is, in one sense, motivated individuals at the specific adhikar to engage in like mixed devotional service. That
to give a more concrete thing and be less abstract. Say somebody is here, or generally congregational members are like this. They may be reluctant to engage in book distribution, and some of them may never. But if you say, well, you engage in book distribution, and then you even get some income from it. Well, and that may inspire them to take up book distribution. And by their engagement in book distribution, they may find inspiration in book distribution, and then come to the point of rather than engaging in it just for the sake of some sort of income they get from it, they'll start to become purified by that activity, and then just engage in it for the sake of engaging in it. I know a few devotees who have been like that in such circumstances, and many different services is like that. Not many, but you see people come to Krishna consciousness generally. Actually, it's like that with some motive, and by engaging in the process, in the process, there's purification like that. So it's just a more concrete thing. But yeah, just the same thing, like making the point clear that there is a higher stage, because there are conceptions amongst at least some groups of devotees that that's just like the be-all end-all devotional service, that my otherwise you get stuck up in that platform of rendering service for the sake of some sort of monetary benefit. We can't get love of God through such a means. We have to ultimately come out of that. But at least in lower levels, there's gradations of religiosity. Srila Prabhupada made the point. It's good for bringing people up through that. So it's not necessarily wrong like that. So.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Okay. Anything else? No. Mataji has something?
Well, I had a similar question as Prabhu, but from the sort of the inverse, that if somebody's doing book distribution, prasadam distribution, and then they're living in an ashram, and then they're moving on from that, and they need a means of livelihood, then I've had some devotees say, it's contaminating to do book distribution with a mindset of, I'm going to maintain myself, or I haven't heard it so much with prasadam distribution, but let's just say another Brahminical activity like that. But then I asked my spiritual master about that. He's like, if you can maintain yourself through book distribution, that's glorious.
It's good.
So I didn't get a chance to ask him why or anything like that. So I'm just wondering if you can, maybe you already answered it in Prabhu's question, but sort of the opposite way, where somebody was doing it for like just service sake, and then it kind of takes on like maybe a different...
a monetary. Yeah, that's there. The thing is, you can... there's different angles of looking at it. I'll give a few. One thing is that the monetary benefit may come of it, and you may sustain yourself. I mean, it's common. One thing is, I'll speak from what Srila Prabhupada said, specifically about book distribution or prasad distribution and book distribution. Okay, two things. One, Srila Prabhupada, he told that restaurants are a means by which we can engage in grahastas, by which grahastas can make a living. What does that mean? They're making money through prasad distribution. He also said the same thing about book distribution. Book distribution, it's a good means to generate income. And he approved the grahastas doing such means like they would generate income and then sustain themselves on their books. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's completely fine. It's a Brahminical way of living, actually, to distribute prasad, and simultaneously it's preaching. It's a very glorious way. But one thing is the mentality with which it's done. The same activity could be done, but take two different people, okay? One may be running a restaurant out of a desire to preach, out of a desire to benefit others, to distribute Krishna's mercy among the population, and as a result, naturally his sustenance comes through the restaurant. Generally, a varnashrama system was set up like this, is that one's duty is stressed, or one's sense of duty is stressed more out of one's economic result of one's activities. In other words, you see that like farmers, they will till the land, or Shudras, they will do their labor, or Brahmanas, they will engage in sacrifices, not for the sake of gaining some result or their livelihood, rather that's their duty. They will engage in their duty, and almost as a byproduct, which they're unattached to, automatically their maintenance comes, both as a result of the duty and as a result of God's maintenance. Both things were considered there. Now, in modern society is the opposite. We just perform our work for the sake of some sort of fruit. Otherwise, if the fruit is there, we just neglect the duty. So, it's a different consciousness. The same thing in devotional service. So, one can be doing these activities like that, but it really depends on the consciousness we're bringing to the activity. If we're engaging in book distribution just with take the same restaurant example because it's easy, that I was giving earlier, that somebody running a restaurant for the sake of preaching is very purely motivated. Just like this verse I was quoting earlier, haituki pratihata, no motive. So the most important thing here is the motive in which it's done. Of course, so you can be running such operations for the sake of preaching without any particular motive, for the sake of satisfying the spiritual master too, and then automatically one can also sustain oneself. Or it could be done just for the sake of, the primary purpose could be of generating money within one's mind, and then secondary to that, just as a byproduct, there is some preaching that goes on, like that. That's also good to some degree. That's also good. I mean, it's better. Well, it gets complex if you take it like that. But the pure form of that is just taking it taking it as a means of, as a duty, and then whatever comes from that is like that. So, just clarifying, there's nothing wrong with that, and Srila Prabhupada in many different places, he authorized that, grahastas, they can sustain themselves via book distribution, they can sustain themselves via restaurants, prasad distribution, etc. like that. So these are programs which are recommended by Srila Prabhupada, but we shouldn't allow because when you're dealing with money, the thing is the mentality, that mentality can creep in, but we shouldn't let that mentality creep in. As far as possible, our mentality should be, I'm getting that Krishna is supplying. The activity may seem to be supplying, but actually Krishna is supplying personally for everything. I mean, actually, Krishna is the maintainer of everybody, even the animals. Even those karmis in society who are working job, ultimately Krishna is providing. Of course, money may be there, but Krishna is providing not only the money, but so many different things, the air, the water, etc. like this. So, ultimately, that consciousness has to be the root of what we're doing, and whatever we're doing. Is that okay?
That was great, thank you.
Okay. You have something from that?
Guru Maharaj has brought up this instance many times in his, I think it was Guru Maharaj's first initiation, or maybe it was his second initiation, but Srila Prabhupada was doing the yajna for the initiation, and there was a baby in the back who had, the baby had their hand in their mouth.
Yeah.
And Srila Prabhupada ordered baby, go, wash your hand. You're contaminating the whole yajna. And so it seems that when people say you shouldn't have these motives with book distribution, it seems that they're thinking that this will contaminate the yajna, this impure motivation will contaminate the yajna. But it seems that the principle is some yajna is better than no yajna at all.
True. It is. Yeah. It is true. Yeah. True. Well, fire sacrifice, the thing, okay, technical point. Fire sacrifice actually has to be pure, otherwise you don't get the result. If the yogya is contaminated. Yeah, that's the thing. Strictly speaking, if the mantra is even mispronounced, you don't get the result
That's
of the
why
fire
it's not
sacrifice.
recommended.
Actually, it's very complicated. We observe a very simple form here. So that's one thing, specifically with fire sacrifice. That's what I'm saying. But with specifically that, yeah, it's with Sankirtan. Some Sankirtan is, how to say, just like the same thing with our own chanting. Some people have the misconception that, okay, well, I'm not going to chant purely, so I won't chant. No, you chant, and by that chanting, you will chant purely, etc. like that. So there may be some motive, but the thing is, the aspiration has to be there that, okay, well, I'll come to the platform of chanting purely. That also has to be there. Otherwise, you also won't come to that pure platform. That is the same thing applies. It's better to do some Sankirtan, even if materially motivated, and have a higher conception than to do nothing of it. Just what you thought what you said made me think of one thing, that the mentality in which it's done, just highlighting it more. Somebody can be the same point of doing the same activity. One person can be money conscious when doing Sankirtan. Another person can be conscious of trying to give out books to others, and it means spreading Chaitanya's mercy, fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So the activity is the same, but the consciousness may be very, very different. Of course, that activity should be there, specifically in Sankirtan, but yeah, same thing. So,
And what, the degree to which you have no motivation, you get more benefit from that activity.
yeah,
Like Krishna's mercy comes, the yogya is more pure if you have a pure mentality when you do it. And anyways, it's just kind of a funny thing how the less you want your own benefit, the more you actually get benefited.
yeah, it's true, like that. The less you desire in devotional service, the more, yeah, it's like that. The more you get benefited. It's contradictory to us. Actually, it's not so contradictory. It looks contradictory because we're conditioned by the material world. That's why it looks contradictory. Otherwise, it's just, that's Krishna's grace, that's his magnificence. That's how things naturally work in the spiritual world, or the universe itself, actually. But we just don't see that, and we feel the need. Just like in the 6th canto, the demigods, they're praying to Krishna for something. And they say in their prayers that, even before offering these prayers, I'm paraphrasing, even before offering these prayers, you know what we wanted, but nevertheless, we're offering these prayers to you as a sense of formality. So they understood that Krishna understood their minds, and there was no need to actually pray for what they were praying, but materially motivated what to do. They felt the urge to pray to Krishna like that. But actually, the mood should be more of Ashli Shiva Padaratam Pinashtumam, that even if you crush me, if you crush me by your embrace, whether you, what is it? Was that? Adarshana marma hatam karotava yitatava vitatulam pato matprana natastaseva naparaha. There's no other resort other than you. You're the Lord of my life, and there's nobody else other than you. So it is very difficult to do, but that should that should be the mentality. Even if we can't come to that stage immediately, at least we should acknowledge that Krishna is our protector, that somehow Krishna will maintain us. Because he's been maintained, there's so many people who are maintained. If you look at it, especially go to India, you see how some people are scraping by. Krishna's maintaining everybody in the world somehow or another, you know what I mean? So definitely Krishna will maintain us, So, yeah, like that. That idea was one of the limbs of surrender that's given there in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Is it? Anyways, it's mentioned in Shastra somewhere. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also gives it. So we should cultivate that mood, at least, or try to keep it in mind, even if we can't perceive even if it looks like, we're in poverty, etc., like this and that. Actually, that's Krishna's grace upon us, where generally people think of maintenance. Okay, people think of maintenance. Generally, we think of bodily maintenance. What is bodily maintenance? If you have money, you can maintain your body. And so maintenance means you have money. But actually, if Krishna deprives you of that money, actually that's his grace. Elsewhere, I saw one statement just yesterday. I don't know the Sanskrit of it, but it was saying that it was confirming the same thing, that poverty is actually God's grace. effectively. The same statement just confirmed again. So actually, that's actually, we're thinking maintenance means money, but actually if we're deprived of that money, that's actually Krishna's grace upon us. We can't see it like that. And if we're put into a situation of poverty, the general tendency is that, oh, Krishna isn't maintaining me, but actually he may be showing us his grace, special grace, actually. So, anugraha. Generally, this word anugraha you see is there's many different words for mercy. Anugraha, at least from what I've seen, is like a sort of special mercy. Just like in the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, this word comes that by my grace be enlightened. Anugraha. Krishna personally enlightened Brahma with the Gayatri mantra. He showed him the darshan of the spiritual world. He shook his hand. That's very special mercy. That's anugraha. That's very special mercy. So there's this special mercy. Even Prabhupada translated this verse that special mercy is shown. So that special mercy comes in the form of poverty, but we don't see it like that. So, okay. Anything else? Okay. Srimad Ramanujacarya ki jai, Mukunda King Kulashekar Alwar ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.